Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome, and thank you very much for joining us on what is another Thoughtful Thursday's edition of Talk Today, as we have the excellent company of my very good friend Leonard Dilbert, and we're going to provoke some excellent discussion. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Afternoon, welcome, and thanks for joining us. And thanks to Leonard Dilbert for not just sitting with us, but if I might say, for being such a prolific writer. And hopefully one day it'll encourage more of us to appreciate the importance of putting pen to paper. Literally, I know we hit the keyboards and oftentimes in different ways, but nowadays it's probably on touch screen. At the outset, I was going to ask you, what prompted you, what drives you into your writings, but I'll leave you open salvos to you.
That's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, let me be of good manners and say thank you for having me yet again, and for another opportunity to talk about poetry and politics and nation language, which at some point during the session we will get into that in a significant way, I hope. My idea is to actually speak about nation language for a whole session or maybe a couple of sessions, but maybe just introduce it at this point during today's session. I want to say by way of preliminaries that I was thinking about doing this, about being on the air with you and doing this show, and having the sense that you can't lose. And I said, because either what is being said, I'm thinking about my own contribution, will have an impact, and the ruler will attack as a result of that impact, or nobody will take any notice, and that, to my mind, will reaffirm the sense that the ruler maintains the ability to enforce an oppressive silence. So either way, I win.
I like it.
And just a quick note about the use of the term ruler, because it will pop up again and again. And I started using it some time ago because it was a sort of convenient handle for referencing the upholders of the global local system, if you will. The system that seems to me to be characterized by a regressive nature and a repressive nature. I suspect that the local practitioners of governance public governance will not be happy to hear that kind of terminology. But that's part of my provocation, part of the question of whether it has an impact or not. But you only have to look at the sustained system of revenue that we have that has all of this time been based upon a regressive platform, and ask yourself how in the world that we live in, with all that we have available to us by way of resources, that we could really continue to justify having such a system. How is it that the poorest people still pay more proportionally than the richest people? It's absurd. It's not really acceptable. But those who don't like that sort of terminology therefore have the challenge. Do something. Right? And sorry, let me just jump into the Nishan language a little bit, if I may.
Yeah, man.
Because I think it's a natural lead off from the question of not losing, in the sense that it requires to be spoken of the fact that we speak a certain way and yet it has apparently no value. The way of speaking is not just the way of speaking. It has to do with the way that you perceive things, the way you understand things, your comprehension, your grammar, eventually your literature. How you talk, how you hear, how you understand are all encoded in your language. Sorry. And we have the challenge, additionally, of using that language to defend our own national persona, if you will, which is so often spoken of as being passive, laid back, complacent, etc. So I made a couple of quick notes about those terms. To say, to begin with, that passive is not the same as trusting in your own resilience. Because it seems to me that there's a mistaken interpretation at work. Laid back is different from being all too used to toughing it out. And complacent is a ways away from accepting that there's nothing that can be done about certain situations. So I think if we were using terms like stoic, perhaps even fatalistic in some contexts, perhaps even prayer-dependent in other contexts, we'll be getting a little bit closer to describing how Caymanians are, because that's what we're talking about now. We're talking about the terminology used to speak of Caymanians in these disparaging ways. And obviously, in my view, quite wrongly. I don't know that is going to change anytime soon, but I believe that the only way it will change is if those who have some capacity to speak to it actually challenge it openly, as I am doing now. And not just in terms of personal conversation. Challenge it publicly. But challenge it using the best tools. Don't challenge it on the basis of aggro, just getting all riled up about it. Because it needs to be dismantled using good reason, using all the best tools we have available to defeat those kinds of things. Those kinds of things don't go away just because you get angry about it. You have to prove its wrongness, in a manner of speaking. The American poet Audre Lorde used the expression, the master's tools will not destroy the master's house. So we have to craft our own tools in order to dispense with those kinds of things. And I feel like I am attempting at least to carve out some new tools, if you will, in terms of language. And what I'm proposing to do today is to, I suppose, spend more time actually reading some of my own stuff and then speaking to it to some extent. The first one I would read is called Introducing Horse Rooster. There's a particular rooster. He seems to have either died or moved away now from near to my residence. But I used to hear him repeatedly, and it was the weirdest and most disgusting sounding crow of a rooster I'd ever heard. And I eventually started to call him the horse rooster because he sounded as if he was choking. Right? And so that's by way of sort of explaining that terminology. But I have a couple of the terms in the piece that I want to speak to because of their association with our nation language. I use the term 4-day morning, which I've used previously. It's a term that I like to use because I think it is a wonderful little piece of music in itself, and therefore very usable for poetry. I also use the phrase "I knoweth her not" in the piece, and that is not nation language per se, except insofar as it represents a story that I heard about two seamen. And you may have heard the story that involved the two guys going ashore. I think it was Mobile, Alabama. And one of them being anxious to return to the ship because it was getting late, and it was Mobile, after all, this was the deep south, and therefore not a safe place at that, well, even now probably, but certainly at that time, which I believe was the 60s, not a safe place for two men of dark complexion, shall we say, to be on the street without any obvious explanation as to why they were there, sort of thing. So they were walking down the street, and one of them anxious to get back to the ship and urging the other one being very lackadaisical and feeling very cool. And a police cruiser comes up and starts to question the cool one as to, well, what are you doing on the street at this time? He gets a bit flustered and appeals to the other one, who is now going over to the other side of the street to say, well, explain to them that we're going back on the ship, that this is where we're from, and so on and so on. And my man turns across the street and says, I knoweth him not. You're not getting dragged into that. So I've just adapted it for this context and using the term her, changing the him to her. Because of the change of context. And I think there's only one other term in this that I want to sort of highlight from that point of view, and that is the use of the word suppose, but with the D, pronounced with the D missing from it. Because in our way of speaking, that has a particular use. And I won't try to explain that too much now. I think it'll become a little bit more apparent how that works in the context.
Right.
So,
and with your acquiescence and not the most timely, 4:15, we have that break.
Yes.
And we can get the introducing horse rooster
when
we come back.
All right. Well, that was the introduction.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll read it when we come back.
Please join us after this break.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
CUC advises customers that their customer service center on North Sound Road will be moving to Caribbean Plaza on West Bay Road. As of Tuesday, June 7th, the customer service center on North Sound Road will be closed to walk-in customers. For more information, contact CUC's customer service team at 949-5200 or email at service@cuc.ky. Superior Auto is pleased to announce the grand reopening of the new Superior Auto Apprenticeship Center on Seymour Drive. New opportunities, new beginnings, a new home for Caymanian youth seeking career training and certification in high-demand trades such as automotive repair, AC, refrigeration, and so much more. Put the value in your pocket. Fun fact, the average hourly rate for a tradesman can be 4.5 times the minimum wage. The Superior Auto Apprenticeship Center is a not-for-profit program. Accepting applications from June 20th to July 20th. Contact 949-9570 or 525-9571 to apply today. The Superior Auto Apprenticeship Center, successfully building the next generation of hardworking Caymanians since 2010.
The Honourable Speaker of the House, Mr. McKeeva Bush, MP for West Bay West, along with the other 3 West Bay MPs, West Bay Central, Ms. Catherine Ebanks Wilkes, West Bay South, Mr. Andre Ebanks, and West Bay North, Mr. Bernie Bush, would like to invite the community to a joint public meeting at the Ed Bush Playing Field on Thursday, June 30th at 7 p.m. That is Thursday, June 30th, 7 p.m. at the Ed Bush Playing Field.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and thanks too to Leonard Dilbert for sharing with us not just his writings, but I think more importantly, the thing that sparked, but more, the commentary, the analysis, the discussion. Because sometimes we listen to even a nice calypso, and we understand bits and pieces, but do we understand the context and even the greater part of the message? So I appreciate this one. This is like a good psalm or a good calypso. Huh?
Well, I hope I can draw from both, to tell you the truth, because they both have their appeal, right? They both have their usefulness as compositional approaches. Maybe more, I don't know, maybe closer to Sam I was going to say, but I'll leave that to other people to judge. Because I suspect that a lot of people will not see that parallel at all, because Psalms in many people's minds has specific religious content. A psalm, strictly speaking, is not, but that's another story. Yeah. Okay, so introducing Horse Rooster. I promised to read that, and I would propose to do that now. Introducing Horse Rooster. Horse Rooster uses air like a feral sprite blowing into a leaky bagpipe. Horse Rooster stands between the Iron Shore and me. That means the Iron Shore and the sea and me separated. Horse Rooster's opus in progress records the salt-sprayed, purpled dusk of 4-day morning as the coming sun's colourful whisper about the moon, which has just slipped under the bar of the horizon, saying, I knoweth her not. Without a spoon, sans, fork, or knife, that's how birds with broken beaks are. Horse Rooster is a fortunate exception to this, and so may forage with the best of them. Yet his trouble seems to almost defeat diagnosis, which means, you know it, we have to wonder about the status of sinews that's supposed to join the apparatus to its inspiration. Flawed, but not inadequate. Come the revolution, Horse Rooster will be classed as Q for qualified, which means it may continue. Horse Rooster may even sound allegorical in his call to dog and master through the murk of 4-day morning. The half-cracked issue of its throat and tongue, is it a warning?
You know, when I first read that, thanks for sharing with me. I wonder sometimes if it's not just only the writer, but the reader, but also, you know, when you're listening to it as you sit in the audience and listen to it being read to you, if it resonates in different ways. And as I read, there's all sorts of thoughts went through my mind.
Yes, you tell us one.
And I see at times great symbolism and stuff. Maybe more visually attuned might watch something on the silver screen, as it were, and see, not realize what they saw, or they may watch it. And for me, the strong analogy as to what is transpiring in our country is so evident here that it should cause us to stop and take stock. But then will we just hear it as wonderful?
Tell your listeners about a specific instance that you're talking about now. a testing, you know.
When the master teaches the student who shall be so encouraged to respond. You know, last evening I you know, you sit at your desk and you intend to do something, and you come bearing gifts, as it were. And, you know, for those of us, we plan, we prepare, we execute, we have a purpose. Then there's a reason for what we do. And uncertainty rarely is something that we do well with. We like to know. And then there are times when in our lives we see things unfolding, and we say, well, it's good to be spontaneous. Sometimes it's good not to be so structured. Let things transpire and see where they go. And it's almost as if you look at, let's say, two ships in the night just passing, and they never seem to find the port. Or when they do, if you look at it with people, you know, one is at the airport and one is at a train station, and then when you go there, and so as I listen to what you just read, then I recall that sometimes, you know, if we sit and don't act, we're going to just let things just unfold beyond our control. But when we act, are we adamant, dogmatic, structured, and sufficient to strategize, or are we just letting the chips fall? And I think in the Cayman context, when we look at the pace of development or progression relative to our constitution and political evolution, we can't afford to let the chips fall.
Aye. Well, that is a whole bag of tricks by itself. Yeah, I mean, my quick comment, since you mentioned the Constitution, a quick comment about the Constitution is that it's been a great platform for crafting institutions, or at least the forms of institutions, maybe I should say, for pieces of organization, maybe I put that way. Lots of commissions and all this sort of thing. And there are merits to those structures. There's value possible to come out of those things, but you have to wonder whether you're really getting value if the bulk of the population is not familiar with the Constitution, doesn't really appreciate what its content is, but yet there are all these institutional creations set up to manage the Constitution. So it strikes me as sort of being a Constitution that is essentially pitched at a certain segment of the population who have the capacity to engage with it.
Almost like we're doing something esoteric.
Yeah, it is a bit esoteric, but it's only one of many pieces of a puzzle that we need to be picking at and working with to see if really this is the best way to put things together for us. I think to a large extent we are living with outmoded structures and practices. But who am I to say?
When you say that, I almost think of the two children playing with two tin cans and a string to communicate, and yet they should be in a world where there's no fiber optics, and we haven't even told them about that. And when they do, we give them an answer story about why we're not even to even talk of that.
Yeah, well, I don't want to to fall into the trap of comparing those who are perhaps not as well equipped as they should be, as they ought to have been enabled to be, with constitutional arrangements, with governance structures and so on. I don't want to compare them to children by any means. But if I stick with your analogy for a minute and called that child with the tin cans and the string the persons in that category, then it seems to me that what's happening is that there are children with tin cans and string present within the situation, but also present within the situation are the fiber optic operators and users who are operating globally and with great comfort. It shouldn't be the case that so many are left behind, or so many get less in our context. And this is not a new thing to be said. I'm not saying it like I'm not by any means the first one to make that observation. That observation has been made over and over again, and that is what is to some extent most galling about it. The fact that there's no question about it being in a secret. The persons in charge of governance know, they must know, that there are these deficiencies, and yet nothing is really done about it.
Yeah, I guess the status quo works for us all. But anyway, this is where writing and reading conversation brings much, discussion and promote us as it provokes us to think.
Well, yeah, and what I hope I can do, and to some extent I'm beginning to do in these kinds of sessions, is lend some tools to people to begin to understand and accept that it is okay to question, it is okay to disagree, it is okay to have your own point of view, etc. And it is so okay that they should begin practicing it, because we need a whole lot more of that than we currently have. We don't really need every 4 years at the ballot box and then you go home and are no longer concerned with governance.
Right. And I think this is where hopefully people listening would see this isn't just about, a writing or a writer or a poet. That you just like the Psalms, Some of us read it for comfort. We do the prayers of protection. Some of us look to the Proverbs for instruction. And some of us, hopefully, even the most trained, you may have gone to the seminary and you have a degree in divinity and what have you. But appreciate you don't know everything. And even the thing that you thought you can see it again in a different context when circumstances merit. So be willing to explore and to examine.
Well, since you've gone off onto that Psalms tangent again, I think I need to say something about that whole context, in that I have serious difficulty with the role of the church in reconciling myself to what the church is and what it is not, what it does and what it does not do. And it is better for me to read a short paragraph that I have here than try to articulate it again. And here goes. I speak not to renounce the Christian faith, far from it, but neither to adhere to or proclaim the Bible as the singular voice of God, rather to ask of the faithful, is this truly Christ-like? And I'm speaking of the way the church presents itself in general. What iniquities, what oppressions, what unrighteousness, what violence do you confront, the church that is, and stand willing to battle against? And it seems to me that the church as an institution owes its parishioners, its congregations, answers to those kinds of questions, because Christ-like behavior would require far more disagreement with the status quo, far more challenge to the way that things are done than what I'm seeing. I'm not hearing any voice coming from that quarter in that vein at all, and that is, it's hugely disappointing in terms of what the church says it is. It's even more hugely disappointing in terms of what the Christian faith, to my reading, seems to require. All right. And we breaking?
Yes, sir. We got a break. We got a couple of calls.
Okay.
All right. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Subway's giving you flavor around the clock with the new Chicken Squad sandwich options. Try the classic chicken and bacon ranch, the sweet and savory barbecue chicken, or the chicken cordon bleu. 3 new appetizing and delicious sub options that you can also make into a wrap. The Chicken Squad is available at Subway for only a limited time. Subway, giving you something to cluck about. If you care about your car's performance and fuel economy, you must fill up at Jose's Escape with the new Pure 93. Experts know that the higher the octane rating, the better your engine will perform. Pure 93 is the highest octane fuel available in Cayman. Protect your car against pre-ignition and engine knocks. Top up your tank now with Pure 93 at Jose's Rubis and enter to win an awesome track bike. But there's more. Jose's offers 2 lateral flow test kits for only $10. The best KN95 masks, 2 for $5, and 10 stylish black surgical masks are only $5. Share the love. Purchase Reflections gift certificates and enter to win the amazing Trek bike.
Inaja Productions, in association with Cash Wiz Cayman, presents Cash Wiz Cayman Kids Got Talent Show.
At Pinnacle Warehouse, Sunday,
July 17. Start the summer right and come out. Support and cheer on our kids as they show off their God-given talent. Showtime 5 p.m. Tickets are available at Cash Wiz Cayman and at the gate. Admission only $15. Part proceeds go to Feed Our Future. So join us on July 17 and experience an evening of talent. Cayman Kids Got Talent is sponsored by Cash Wiz, CUC Health City,
Cayman National Bank,
People's Choice Groceries, LED Lighting Engineering and Design, KPMG, Seaport Marine,
General Automotive Services, Maxwell Plumbing Services, Party Animal, Breezy Production,
Radio Cayman, Breeze FM, and Inaja Productions.
The Honorable Speaker of the House, Mr. Mckeeva Bush, MP for West Bay West, along with the other 3 West Bay MPs, West Bay Central, Ms. Catherine Ebanks-Wilkes, West Bay South, Mr. Andre Ebanks, and West Bay North, Mr. Bernie Bush, would like to invite the community to a joint public meeting at the Ed Bush Playing Field on Thursday, June 30th at 7 p.m. That is Thursday, June 30th, 7 p.m. at the Ed Bush Playing Field.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And in the studio is Linda Dilbert as we, hopefully inspire within you some thoughts and some pensive moments. We do have a couple of callers on though. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sterling.
And to you, sir. How are you today?
Yes, I wasn't sure whether I was on or not. Good afternoon to Mr. Leonard here. It's always very good to hear him on here.
Good afternoon, sir.
Very good. Early on, you're speaking about or sort of a passive attitude that people have associated with us over the last, I'd say, 50 years. And since then, it has become, I don't know, a great amount of different nationalities here. So it's a very different Cayman from what it was when we were seamen, turtlers, and so forth. And I can easily understand a sort of reasoning for this, because you've got to remember all the seamen. I remember my dear father and all that moments. He would never ever be fidgety or get up on wondering what to do. It was always a calmness about him because of the sea. That was his life, turtling. You had to be a patient person. You had to be able to accept situations of great danger every now and then, because we moved from that type of life very quickly 50 years ago into accounting and the financial world, the lawyering and so forth. You never heard any lawyers or accountants that believe losing your life or risking your life to their trade. But many Caymanians, several, I won't say many, died because of their trade of seamanship. And so you got used to these harrowing situations, and it gave you a calmness that might deceptively be associated with passive people or people that's willing to accept anything. Another thing is this: we are inundated with people from around the Caribbean, and we've got to understand all these countries, I can't think of any, that don't have labor unions. We might think it's a simple thing what I'm saying, but it makes a difference in the life of the ordinary people, because labor unions concern labor, which is the bulk of any country's people are just ordinary laborers, if you want to put it that way, carpenters or masons and tradesmen. And we don't have anything like that this here. The only union we really have in the private world context would be the Chamber of Commerce, which is a union of employers, really. So this is what I'm saying. I think this is what has caused us to be looked at as a passive people, and it is to our detriment. It is to our detriment. But I leave you for that to sort of sink in, and you think about it and see whether I'm right or wrong in this kind of determination. But I've often thought that this is one of the things that has led to our people looking at us as passive people and laid-back people, because the seamanship, it just went away. There were young men 50 years ago still involved, still with that kind of mentality, still in that life. Though 50 years ago my father's quite old, now getting on there. But there were others, and that went down. It would take another generation maybe for it to go right away. But we can see the difference in the younger generation. They're no longer thinking about the sea, going to sea and so forth. We know that. But I think that had led to this uniqueness about us, because we were the only people that really concentrated wholly and solely, mainly on the sea, that I can think of in the Caribbean for quite a while, and the turtling, and that's what gave us those seafaring abilities, by the way. But this is, I'm just trying to portray this idea, and I've seen it because I can remember very well the life of 50-odd years ago, even more than that here, that we were not, we were just those quiet, laid-back people who went about doing things and never got flustered, where other people would have been flustered by events that unfolded and so forth. And I think this is what has led to us being looked at as passive people. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'll listen on.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
You too, sir. Thank you for sharing. I know, perhaps one more call, Miss Susan? Hey.
And we'll respond after the news.
Well, no, to the caller, we're just going to take the news in a second. But when I listen to the caller's points, you can see, as Mr. Roy Bott talked about, a society in transition.
Yes, but can I just say?
Yeah.
I take the point that is made, and what that does for me is provide specific evidence, if you will, of the difference between a way of life that had certain characteristics to it for certain reasons, and pejorative set of terms used by people who didn't really care about that way of life or anything else, or what the rationale was for people being the way they are. Their only concern seemed to be to characterize in that particular way. Because it seems to me that if you are a stranger in a country and what you need to do is to make space for yourself, to some extent you need to make that space for yourself by pushing those who are there to one side enough that you have your own breathing room. And that is part of the sociological tool employed in that kind of transition. But I think I actually spoke to exactly the things that the caller was talking about in the phrasing that I use. That being passive is not the same as trusting in your own resilience, right? Being laid back is different from being used to toughing it out. And I think with a little thought, you can see that essentially the same things that are being said by the caller are anticipated in that phrasing. That allows for a lot of documentary evidence to be presented to say, oh, that refers to this kind of experience.
All right, with that, sir, let's pause for news and return with our callers. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. 9 Cayman Islands high school students will head to Geneva, Switzerland in October to compete against robotics teams from 180 countries in the first Global Challenge. Further details on the first Global Challenge will be announced in the coming weeks. In international news, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has lost some of its power to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The landmark ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court represents a major setback to President Joe Biden's climate plans. The case against the EPA was brought by West Virginia on behalf of 18 other mostly Republican-led states and some of the nation's largest coal companies. These 19 states were worried their power sectors would be regulated and they would be forced to move away from using coal at a severe economic cost. In a 6-3 ruling, the court sided with the conservative states and fossil-fueled companies, agreeing that Congress had not intended to delegate decisions of such economic and political significance. Russian President Vladimir Putin still wants to capture most of Ukraine, U.S. intelligence agencies believe. Moscow's troops have been so weakened by combat, however, that U.S. officials assess they are only capable of making slow territorial gains. It means the war could last for a long time, Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines says. In March, Moscow refocused its efforts on seizing Ukraine's Donbass area after failing to take Kiev and other cities. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office.
Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray, and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art
Superior Auto
digital
is pleased
mammogram
to announce
machine.
the grand reopening of the new Superior Auto Apprenticeship Center on Seymour Drive. New opportunities, new beginnings, a new home for Caymanian youth seeking career training and certification in high-demand trades such as automotive repair, AC, refrigeration, and so much more. Put the value in your pocket. Fun fact, the average hourly rate for a tradesman can be 4.5 times the minimum wage. The Superior Auto Apprenticeship Center is a not-for-profit program, accepting applications from June 20th to July 20th. Contact 949-9570 or 525-9571 to apply today. The Superior Auto Apprenticeship Center, successfully building the next generation of hardworking Caymanians since 2010.
But I do have some questions.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for sharing with us, and thanks to Delena Dilber for being a guest and sharing your writings. You know, we do have another caller. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. And I understand that you were on way before the news, so thank you for calling, but for being so patient.
Yeah, that's the way to be, I guess.
Well, maybe that speaks to the characteristic of someone you ethos. But thank you, sir.
Yeah. Anyway, that I guess it was the last call, Mickey. I think he has a lot of very important points there on what he exposed. But it was something that I think your guest there said a little while back, and relevance to the Constitution. And I think it was basically that the general public don't know what's in the Constitution. And I think he made reference to some of the commissions and so forth that the Constitution has created, or that comes under the umbrella of the Constitution. I believe we got a Constitution Commission, I think.
Yes.
And I'm not sure how much we hear from them. But it might be a good suggestion to forward to them that maybe they ought to have monthly or semi-monthly or quarterly or whatever fits into the project meetings within each district, outlining or exposing to what at least their perception of what's in the Constitution. Because, I think as human beings, as you just saw just this morning, one of the greatest constitutional societies in the world, the U.S., over the last couple of days, their highest court said, these people don't know what's in the Constitution. So,
yes. Well, yeah, I couldn't, as I say, I couldn't agree with you more, sir, that there is a lot of room for that kind of activity, for an educational activity. And in fact, I would say when it comes to our entire system of public governance, a whole lot more could be done and should be done. You can't really expect to have good citizenship if the citizens aren't equipped to perform their role as good citizens.
Right,
and I mean, I during my career in government, I challenged every minister I worked with, and there were several from several different persuasions, if you will, and none of them could I get to budge as far as any sort of comprehensive effort at public education. And it goes across the board. From your personal health, the way that you maintain wellness to your education, to your participation in public affairs, the whole gamut is there waiting to be attended to, and you're not attending to any of it as far as I can see.
Yeah, well, you make reference to what you just said about trying to get the powers that be to see these kind of things. And from my own perspective, you remember Motion 390?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, when that was boiling all over the place, I think the governor at that time was Mr. Scott. I had discussions with him that, this was one of the things that we needed to do, was to have these public forums, letting people, getting them more au fait with what was in the Constitution at that time. But I think we've renewed it or modified it, whatever since then.
Yes.
But the same thing stands now. And really, he had agreed to come on to Radio Cayman and to sit down and go through the Constitution as he perceived, because the governor, I think, is the one that would, the governor and the courts, but I think it might go through the governor first. As if something really seriously came up to challenging in the Constitution. So I think it's and going back to the public forums that I mentioned, and that way the general citizen, the citizen like Nikki and Elvis and the whole bunch can say, that's your perception of what's in the Constitution, but here's mine.
Yes.
Now let's see where these things dovetail.
Yes. I mean, having one of the benefits of a better informed citizen is that person is more capable of engaging in any kind of public process, any kind of public governance initiative, to ask good questions or to contribute good suggestions. If you're not equipped to do it, if you're not empowered to do it, then you can't. And unfortunately, it seems to me that is the place that our population generally has been stuck. And it seems to me that those responsible for public governance are failing their population in that respect. I mean, you can say all sorts of things by way of excuse or by way of suggesting that there are more important things to be done, but it doesn't get away from the fact that is the case.
Yeah, the public is who is or who should be served, who the ones that should be served by the Constitution.
Yes.
And but I think these kind of forums like what is happening there today, and when you think of communications, what we got 21. Maybe more than that now. Radio stations.
Yes.
Man.
Yes.
Now what?
And we know better informed.
Yeah, and maybe more so misinformed.
Yes, that could be
on the other side.
That could be more accurate. Yes.
Because from the beginning, a lot of stuff that comes out was coming out of some of those avenues from way back,
Yes.
Really.
Indeed.
Yeah, I recall. I guess it was certainly it was long before Gilbert, but one of the severe weather system that was coming through, and one of the stations on Cayman was saying, and we're going to have a hurricane party.
Oh, God.
And, we had, Lordy, I said, I'm not sure whether somebody called me or I heard it myself.
Yeah.
And the next day,
yeah,
we called them in, or we got them together and said, hey, in Cayman there's no hurricane parties, but that is a sort of practice in other jurisdictions.
Yes. The cultural discrepancies, let's call it that, instead of calling it conflict, the cultural discrepancies are many, and some of them are real obvious or make themselves obvious by those kinds of statements, those kinds of public attitudes. And what it may seem like the two ends cannot meet, but what I am really trying to do, or part of what I'm trying to do in terms of sharing the things that I'm writing, is to confer, or at least encourage persons to confer a greater legitimacy on our own cultural ethos, to say that it's okay if we think a certain way, it's okay if we question things a certain way, it's okay if we are moved to challenge or to champion things a certain way, because there is a grounding for it in our own cultural upbringing, and that has legitimacy as great as or better than anything anywhere. And if I can make a little dent in that, I would be pleased.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there are a lot of instances, I think, within our cultural journey where a lot of these things, and you mentioned the word passive, but us being passive. But you think back on some of our seafarers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were seafarers who was in the National Maritime Union in the U.S. in North America.
Yes.
And the Seamen's Institute, I think, and SIU, Seamen's. Anyway, that was a union.
Yes.
There were Caymanians who walked those picket lines for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yes.
Now, you talk about being passive. That's not being passive.
Yeah.
But let me finish.
Yes, no, go ahead.
But they did that over there.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't sort of bring that, that passion.
That approach.
Back here.
Right.
Back here.
Yeah. But But I think it's very much a worthwhile exploration to pursue that further, in the sense that on the face of it, my immediate response would be that our own ways of managing our society, the sort of social controls that were necessary for our society to remain the way it was, they were things that you take in with your mother's milk, as Rousseau famously said, right? And by the time you're an adult and you're walking picket lines, you appreciate that there's a difference between that world and this world, and that some things that work in that world do not work in this world.
Right. Yeah,
there's no place for it either. There's no sort of institutional context for it. Whereas in that world, there would have been a whole set of movements that would have led towards having an organization like a labor union and having the support system, having the organizational structures and so on that make it work, and the political clout, the political backing that would have allowed it to happen. And in our context, those things had not developed, were not present. So it wasn't necessarily a choice for people either. But even if it, to the extent that it was a choice, you understood that there are different rules in different societies, and this society had its own rules. So my point in bringing up these sorts of terminology is to do two things, I suppose. One, to highlight the fact that it is happening still, that people still are in the practice of using that kind of terminology in a pejorative way towards Caymanians, and to provoke the Caymanians to say whether or not they find that acceptable, whether or not they have something else to say that presents a different picture. And I think there's a whole lot to say, as yourself and the previous caller provided evidence, that there's a whole lot more to say than just simply keeping quiet about that kind of pejorative terminology being directed at yourself.
Yeah, but I think the good thing about it is that there are more people maybe speaking now.
Yes.
I mean, Dr. Maxfield, both
yes,
both you and Frank and Roy and Gilbert and all. So I think.
Yes, but I suppose my concern is that we still seem to be in a place where persons who project themselves into the situation and speak publicly are very much in the minority, and that tends to evolve into those persons gaining a certain amount of notoriety for themselves, etc. But they're outliers, right? And what I think is a far preferable situation is a situation where the population in general, it's more of a household discussion, if you will. The population in general is tuned in with that kind of discourse and is able to contribute to it in a meaningful way.
Let me ask you this. Just picking up on what you said, do you think that this went on in the households, let's say 50 years ago, 60 years ago, more than it is today?
What's that?
The discussion.
Oh, no, and I don't know that actually.
No.
It would be a good exercise to undertake, but the only way you can undertake that really is to research it, right? To look for the evidence, and this is one of the things that we unfortunately are not doing enough of for ourselves, to look at the evidence presented by our own way of life, our own history, and to tease out from that what are the lessons really to be learned from that. And unfortunately, what we have tended to do too much is to simply use the pieces of evidence that suit certain stereotypes that have been established, certain sort of stock references that have been established, and leave it at that. For argument's sake, we speak of ourselves as being a seafaring society. Now, not taking anything away from seafaring, from seamanship, from seamen, the contribution that it made to the community, nothing taken away from that whatsoever, because I realize that it is a tremendous thing. But that doesn't negate the fact that the women in the community manage the society in the absence of most of the men. Not only manage the society in terms of the existing social institutions, but also did things like continue to raise crops, continue to look after animals and so on. And part of the reason why we don't value agriculture any more than we do is because we don't recognize that as having the same standing as the seamanship. And maybe socially it didn't in terms of its monetary value, etc., but it had a significant place in the scheme of things. It had a significant place in the way of life. And until we begin to really value the entire experience and call things what they were and give appropriate credit for things, etc., we are not going to progress.
Well, that's a big job. And
it is a big job. It is a big job, but that is what nation building is about. That is what nation building is about. It's not a political exercise. You know?
Maybe you can in your efforts evoke some of that passion to come up. I don't know whether you might have heard the announcement. I think tonight in West Bay here, and I'm not sure that it ever happened before, but the 4 representatives from West Bay are having a joint meeting.
Yes, but
can you remember when that happened?
No, but except when they were all of one party or whatever. But let me say this: I noticed, I just heard an ad on the same station for the same meeting, and the way it was put, and I don't know who's responsible for this, who's the author of this text or whatever, but the way it was put was Mr. McKeever Bush along with, and then naming out the other 3 representatives from the other 3 constituencies. And to my mind, if you're having a joint meeting of 4 representatives who are essentially on equal terms as far as being representatives, then that is inappropriate, shall we say? But I'll leave that to them.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
But it's great that the 4 representatives.
Yes, and hopefully people make good of the opportunity and give them a good grilling.
Right. Julie would say probably playing the same tune.
Aye.
Hey, thanks very much, sir. Thanks very much. And this is why, as I sat and listened to the exchange, I hope people do the same. Just a couple of things, we can see how it's for the society's benefit, for the society to be engaged with what's happened. Don't leave it for them, whoever they are. The reference to the discussions in our homes.
Yeah.
You acknowledge that those who speak tend to be the outliers as opposed to be the norm, right? And I'm wondering, as part of that sort of informed research, if in those homes where that discussion was evident, if from there you get some of these outliers who speak more publicly,
maybe,
right? And as I look at the need, as a call of reference, for the commission, for the entity to do the public education, very, very instructive. But then it needs to be for us too to be receptive, to ask for it, to attend, to participate, to demand.
Yes.
Tonight's meeting of the four, I like that you picked up on that term. I thought it was just me, because it creates a power structure, right? Our chief among people,
or the appearance of one,
or the perception of one, right? And that's where words, what Scripture says, life and death is in the tongue, right? But more importantly, I'm asking myself, we've now had some constitutional changes, I'm not going to say advances, right? I mean, from what I gather, the role of the Cabinet Secretary has been played down, the Deputy Governor, different roles of importance that should have been increasingly elevated if we were advancing, having in fact done so, right? That aside, the notion that four are now coming together, where we've gone from four representatives being equal to four divided parts of one thing, is this now an indication here we need to work together because we are in this catboat together?
Yeah.
So
we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I was one of those who, while I was within the government system, disagreed vehemently with the setting up of these individual single-member constituencies, because it seemed to me that what we were dealing with was something that was not really broken. Something that was not really broken. It might have been bent a little, but when things are bent, you can straighten them. Right? In any case, I think there are many negatives to the single member constituencies, just as there are positives. And we haven't really tackled it appropriately. We haven't even looked at the question that we, at a stroke of a pen, so to speak, erase the idea of a district. Right? In formal terms, in day-to-day terms, we still refer to those districts, but its political standing is now gone, as it were. And
that's significant.
But we that's a whole discussion by itself.
One that we need to. I'm invited to take the break a little bit early because we have another call on, so we can get the call extended.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Okay.
All right, to the caller, we're going to join you right after for an uninterrupted discussion. Stay tuned.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Ransomware, DDoS, malware, phishing. If you don't know what those mean, you're not alone. But if you aren't protected against those cybersecurity attacks, then your business is at risk. Don't leave your data or your business vulnerable. Get Digicel Business Protect. Simpler, smarter cybersecurity. Visit our website, www.digicelbusiness.com, to request a callback or call us now on 623-2499.
For the month of July, the Needs Assessment Unit will hold their district visits as follows. Friday, July 1st, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the West Bay Public Library. Friday, 8th July at the East End Civic Center. From 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., NAU will be serving clients from East End, and from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., they will serve clients from North Side. Friday 15th July, the Needs Assessment Unit will be in Bordentown from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Bordentown Public Library. And on Friday 22nd July, NAU will hold a district visit in West Bay from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the West Bay Public Library. Superior Auto is pleased to announce the grand reopening of the new Superior Auto Apprenticeship Center on Seymour Drive. New opportunities, new beginnings, a new home for Caymanian youth seeking career training and certification in high-demand trades such as automotive repair, AC, refrigeration, and so much more. Put the value in your pocket. Fun fact, the average hourly rate for a tradesman can be 4.5 times the minimum wage. The Superior Auto Apprenticeship Center is a not-for-profit program. Accepting applications from June 20th to July 20th. Contact 949-9570 or 525-9571 to apply today. The Superior Auto Apprenticeship Center, successfully building the next generation of hardworking Caymanians since 2010. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. The current pension holiday is set to expire September 30th. Employers and employees will be required to recommence the legally specified pension contributions effective with October earnings. If you have any questions or concerns, please visit our website at chamberpension.ky or contact us at admin@pensions.ky. The Chamber Pension Plan, representing large and small employers in all sectors of Cayman's economy.
Did you know that ValueMed Pharmacy has a free online prescription service? Managing your health and medical requirements has never been easier with ValueMed. Simply visit value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com and click the Refill Prescriptions tab on our website. Fill in the information for new prescriptions or refills and choose your preferred pickup location, ValueMed on Walkers Road or Bordentown. Then bring in your original prescription from your doctor when picking up. There's no need to stand in line and wait for your prescription. Save time and pick up prescriptions at your convenience by visiting value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, and thanks very much for joining us. Thanks to Leonard Dilbert for sitting with us and, promoting as much as provoking some good dialogue. Provoking. All right. Well, we got a couple of other callers, and we want you to read some of your pieces too, so we want to get to that. But let's just take this call.
Okay.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Dwayne, and good afternoon to Miss Leonard.
Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you today?
Well, I last time I saw that distinguished gentleman, apart from seeing him on your show a few days ago, I think we were in an airport somewhere waiting to board an aeroplane. He might remember that, but I just thought that I might mention that. But it's good to know that you are discussing this issue and discussing it not just from a legalistic side, which sometimes as lawyers we are prone to doing, and then you wind up like losing the population. I think you are discussing it in the broadest possible way, which is, I think, the way it should be.
Mm.
But let me begin by talking about what you just mentioned a little bit about single-member constituencies and so on.
Yes.
I personally wonder whether single-member constituencies are necessarily the right thing for Cayman.
Mm.
I mean, you remember last time in the elections, sometimes when the questioners would be asking a candidate, like, what are the issues in West Bay Central? Sometimes you will find even the questioner will stop and say, well, it's not really West Bay Central, it's really the whole of West Bay.
Mm.
You see?
Yes.
It is because in bigger societies, there tend to be real issues for the particular community because it's a large community. In Cayman, I'm not even quite sure about that. To me, increasingly, I feel like that has just been divisive,
Mm.
But in addition to that, you see, there's this issue that in the last two elections, we've had more independents being elected than members of a party.
Yes.
And when you look at all these issues, I think I I can't have the solution to this, but it seems to me this is a discussion that needs to be reopened. What kind of representative democracy does Cayman need? And in doing so, there is need for creativity, because you see, we are always in this thing that should we have single-member constituencies, or should we have like a broader proportional representation? But I think there is need to look at other methods that might suit a country like Cayman, because at the moment I just don't think that it is working very, very well. Now, in terms of the changes that need to be done, I think a lot of changes need to be done. One, you are right in pointing out that there is not much in terms of education for about the Constitution. And in fact, there is a policy. I think successive governments have had a policy to keep people ignorant. There has been a policy, because I don't want to take too long on it. I designed a couple of courses related directly and indirectly to helping people understand the Constitution, the legislative process, judicial review, and a number of issues like that.
Yes.
And the government fought me. They didn't want those things to be fought. They fought me to the extent of going to court. And to me, that tells you, that tells you that because I tried to teach them in government, they said you can't teach them in government. I tried to teach them privately. They said we can't give you permission to teach you privately. Do you see? There is a policy to say that people should be kept ignorant. So what people need to do is to fight.
Yes.
To fight for things. I would just disagree a little bit that Caymanians are necessarily passive, because when I talk about how the CPR people fought the government, it does not show me that they are passive. When I think about how people went to camp in front of certain MLAs to say, you are not going, we voted for you because you are an independent, you are not going to join a group, and they forced them to say you can't do that.
Yes.
That is people action.
Yes.
But you see, what affects that sometimes is this. Because Cayman, you see, has got such a big expatriate community, and the number of people who have status, they themselves are not really engaged in Caymanian issues. So when you get up tomorrow and you say you are a Caymanian and you want to call a public meeting, only the real generational Caymanians, are particularly interested in that. And that has also become a factor, that the fewer as Caymanians you have become in your own country, the less resources you have to call on to be able to fight political causes. But in the end, what is the solution to this? The solution to this is there is need for people action of the type that I have described. There is need for constitutional change. Cayman at the moment is not a democracy, in my view, because the things are not changing from government to government. It is an oligopoly. There are people both in government, in opposition, in the private sector, who control what is discussed, how it is discussed, what laws are made, and people are being left out. And so there's need for people action. People should learn to go outside the government administration building and camp there almost like it's Easter, and say, can you change the law? Can you change the law because because we want the mortgage issue to be dealt with? Yes. Can you change the law because we want this issue of status to be dealt with? We are being killed in our own country. Can you change the law so that there can be a real advantage given in government to Caymanians? If a Caymanian qualifies for the job, he's performing well, he's got the qualifications, give them the job, even if there might be somebody from the UK with twice the level of experience. Those are the solutions that are necessary. People are doing it, but it needs to be done a lot more to force the government to do things. Let me close on this. Governments don't always do some things because they think that what you are saying makes sense. They know it makes sense, but it doesn't suit them. What you have to do is you have to sometimes extra-legally force them to do what you want them to do. That's my little rant for today, but thanks very much. This is a very, very useful discussion.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. And see, bring on people that promotes and provokes insightful, meaningful discussion.
Indeed.
And but as we go through the discussions, I mean,
use of the term oligopoly is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I kind of anticipated that at the very beginning, but I had a phrase which I didn't use at the time that for those in power whose dream we are all living. It's not our own dream; it's their dream.
Yeah.
Because it goes their way and not our way.
We dance into their agendas, huh?
That sort of thing, yeah. And that's another story. So yeah, to come back to the point I was making earlier about the empowerment project, if you will, the kinds of things that are being said by the callers generally and particularly in a particular pointed way by the last caller is not far removed from what I'm talking about. We're talking about different methodologies, different approaches. That is a sort of more direct political action approach, and I have espoused those kinds of approaches and crafted schemes of various kinds to advance them and try to persuade persons in positions of power and influence to go in those directions and real to no avail. But not just because those efforts were not successful at the time, but more because I'm convinced that at the end of the day, the lasting peace, if you will, and I mean genuine peace, not peace that comes from being compelled to be silent and to not act. That can really only come if persons across the community are able to internalize a certain value system, able to feel confident that they have the capacity to act along with others, given that we are supposedly in a democratic context, act along with others to cause change to happen when it needs to happen. And to do that, there has to be tools available to people. One of those essential tools is the capacity to come to grips with things in a way of gaining understanding, gaining insight, being able to analyze things and so on. And that is where your language skills are necessary. That's where you have to open that box and sharpen those tools, as it were. And as I said before, if I can contribute to that process in a small way, that would, well, even in a big way. But
we got two of the callers joining us.
Yes.
Let's take the calls. Hey, welcome. Good afternoon. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon again. I'm Sterling Grainer.
Yes, sir.
If I was on or not.
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Afternoon.
Don't like to be repetitive, but what I was saying before, and what you said, Mr. Delbert dear, about it, single member constituencies. Yes, it sounds, but it has caused, and I'm not going to go any further with this, divisions. And it has, when the person that is across the road was voting for a person, and now across the road would be a new constituency or different, cannot vote for them any longer. Don't tell me it doesn't cause some consternation. I see it.
Yeah.
I've lived here in West Bay for over 52 years. I won't go any further with that.
Yes.
So it has created a problem that maybe we did not foresee, or we foresaw and thought it would be easily ironed out.
If I could just interrupt you for a second, sir.
Yes, sure.
What I would say to that is that I can't say how many voices were being heard at the time. Certainly they heard my voice quite a few times on the subject when the proposal was being entertained to move towards single-member constituencies. And I remember saying essentially that it's an ideological question that you're looking at. It is you're not proving the need for this on the basis of looking at the experience that people actually have with the system that currently exists and finding that this system is inadequate in this way, in that way, in that way, and therefore you need this better thing, and it's going to be better in this way. That is not the process that I heard at all. The process I heard was an ideological process that said single-member constituencies are necessary because it is what is democratic. And I've heard no proof offered to suggest that what we were operating previously was less democratic than that.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. But that's not really the main focus of me calling back, but
right.
It is, to me, of importance.
Yes.
As Mr. Loxley was talking about, many Caymanians did sacrifice things. My father made great sacrifices. During the Second World War, he had to do a lot of things. I would go into it. I've already mentioned it, the radio and so forth, about that. I'm with other Caymanians along with him.
Right.
Took those great risks. Anyhow, the thing is this, that we're talking about the passiveness or whatever. Our concentration before, we were talking about what our discussions were.
Mm-hmm.
And I just say this quickly. Mr. Winston Churchill, Sir Winston, one of the great orators of all time. If you notice, he spoke in very simple language that everyone could understand, not using big words.
Yes.
That the normal, the ordinary person who is the majority is going to want to hear explained. We're talking about explaining the Constitution and talking about it. Most countries in the world, the people don't really know their Constitution. I defy anyone to tell me that. I lived 12 years in the United States, and very few people that I had with me I ever really knew it. And it's a simple Constitution, not long. But the thing is this: if we have meetings to hear the Constitution, do you think a lot of people are going to go to those meetings? They're going to have a lot of things to look about. The same thing they used to talk about.
Yeah, I would say though, sir, that in my mind, an effort like that can't stand on the basis of public meetings alone, and that sort of approach. That has to go from the school system right up. The entire population really has to be involved in that.
We didn't talk about civics per se when we had conversations. We're talking going back, let's go back 50 years ago and 50 odd. We didn't really. We spoke of things, the civics and the politics, as a more personal thing. This is what I want, and this is what you want, and this is how we talk. This personalized sort of way of politics. And it still pervades quite a bit to this day. And can we say that that is really wrong for us? As you're just saying, what we were doing, was it undemocratic? Maybe what we're going to say, well, no, this is not the way in the modern world now. It's not personalized. It's not this and that. But we are a very small society, and we know the people, and we know the thoughts in people's minds. And we may say, no, that's not how you should think. You should think more holistic. In a more holistic fashion.
Yes, sir.
What would it mean for the people in North Side? What would it mean for the people in South, Georgetown South, in Red Bay, in East End, and in Bordentown? And so, but this way still pervades. What does it mean for me here in my West Bay and my family in my part of West Bay? Now it's poor. This is a kind of mentality that still pervades, you know.
Yes.
We might say I'm talking foolishness, but believe me, I'm old enough to know that there's a price to pay for everything. If we talk about changing or amending or moving Constitution forward anymore, I've always said we should press forward with it. But lately I've been thinking for the last few years, it may not be too wise. You've got to remember that powers that be, and I'm talking now, and I won't say much more before I hang myself, that the private sector, the powerful private sector, might not be receptive to these changes, and we have got to understand that power where it lies. I'm very reluctant to say that many things we would aspire to will not be possible if we think of how the controls really are. And I don't know who's going to really upset the apple cart. We can always say we can move towards political independence with 120 or 140 different nationalities. Who are we going independent for, or who are we not going independent for? Because the generational Caymanians are fast becoming a minority. Anyhow, a pediatrician like myself can see that. And therefore, we have to think carefully when we talk about moving forward. There's a price to pay. A price to pay. Are we willing to explain to the people what that price should be if we really move forward?
Fair enough.
Yes, sir.
Fair enough. But my way of looking at it, or my own enterprise really, is not premised on moving forward, undertaking any particular political agenda. But what I am trying to do myself actually is to, as I said, use the word before, provoke people into thinking a bit more for themselves, to move towards being more fully empowered as individuals so that they can make their own decisions about whether they like the Constitution or not, whether they like single-member constituencies or not, whatever the political structure is, whatever the political concerns are, that they at least can formulate a position for themselves that they are happy to defend.
Thanks very much, Mr. Maker. Really appreciate it. And appreciate Ms. Susan's 5 extra minutes of overtime as we go to the break. When we come back to it, I want you to read some of your poetry, if you would. All right, stay tuned for Talk Today.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences. Do you know a child aged 12 to 15 with a great business idea? If so, the Cayman Islands Center for Business Development is now offering a 1-week youth entrepreneurship bootcamp, equipping students with the practical experience to start their own business. Come with your business ideas and share your other youth. Participants will receive technical training in product development, market research, innovation, and real-life leadership opportunities. The camp is free for participants and will include lunch and snacks. Limited space is available. View the application at www.cicbd.gov.ky and email completed applications to cicbd@gov.ky. For more information, call 244-8009. Application will not be accepted after Friday, July 1st.
The Honorable Speaker of the House, Mr. Makiva Bush, MP for West Bay West, along with the other 3 West Bay MPs, West Bay Central, Ms. Catherine Ebanks Wilkes, West Bay South, Mr. Andre Ebanks, and West Bay North, Mr. Bernie Bush, would like to invite the community to a joint public meeting at the Ed Bush Playing Field on Thursday, June 30th at 7 p.m. That is Thursday, June 30th, 7 p.m. at the Ed Bush Playing Field.
Radio Cayman News.
Lawmakers pass a private member's motion designed to provide increased assistance to Caymanian land and home buyers.
Cayman is facing a cost of living crisis. Prices are going up on just about everything we buy.
Since taking office, we have assisted 246 families in stamp duty already been waived.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
Talk today. but I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for sharing with us, and thanks for listening, and certainly thanks to our wonderful guest, Mr. Leonard Dilbert. Just reminds you how poetry in the sort of public pronouncements, especially in the recorded written form, can help people to appreciate the importance of discussion. So
okay.
All right, well, that's another story, right?
That's another story. Yeah, I'm anxious to read a couple of things maybe to sort of recalibrate a little bit. I'm not by any means afraid of the kind of discussion that we just have been having, but it's definitely veering into the specifically political territory much more than I was aiming to do. Not that that's a bad thing necessarily. It's different, and I think it's more useful from my point of view in terms of taking forward the enterprise that I'm engaged in, insofar as it is particular to the Cayman context, because I don't think poetry can be particular to any national context. But insofar as it is, it definitely makes it more of political in the sense of contested politics. And there's another approach which can come out of persons being more in touch with their interior life and coming to understand that at the end of the day, no matter what they achieve in terms of specifically a political agenda, they still have to live with themselves. They still have to have a reckoning with their own conscience and with their own core values. So how were they made? How did you get there? What work did you do to make that what it is? And I'm hoping to make a little contribution to that work, to engage people in that sort of vein. So, having said that, in this particular piece, which I'm tentatively calling either There's Another Story or That's Another Story, let me just highlight again in terms of the nation language element. There are a couple of bits of terminology or words that persons less familiar with Caymanian usage may have a difficulty with. Hecate is used, and we know that is swamp-based, if you will, small swamp-based turtle that particular to our own environment. I use the phrase Duppy Jamboree, which is not exactly Caymanian, but we know the term Duppy very well, and the use of the term Duppy Jamboree hopefully will make sense in the context in which it arises. Duppy being Duppy and having a jamboree, having a good time. But I think the context will suggest why I'm using the term Duppy in the first place. The sort of ghostly figure that may or may not be benevolent, may not be malevolent. And I referred to Nebuchadnezzar, which again the context will hopefully be clear, but for those who don't know their Bible as well, there's this part of the Bible which refers to Nebuchadnezzar being out eating grass, right, as part of the curse that he experienced for oppressing the people of Israel. And I believe that is, there are a couple of the terms which could be enlarged upon, but I think they'll explain themselves. So that's another story. The truth is, we left our story to be told by those who talk with discarded crab-back perfume on their breaths, those who sip the Hecate's last blood and smear themselves in a camouflage of crab-hole mud. Heirs to the keyhole of the dance we're not invited to, while the Duppy Jamboree raises the roof 10 floors up and counting, then buys and sells the air in parcels. Fool me once, fool me twice. Some say made fools of us, of ourselves, grazing on touch-me-not, picked out among the Nebuchadnezzar grasses. Let us now compare original wickednesses. Let us compare mythologies, or burn them. Tell them, it's Cayman, don't you know? Fastest at going from one bite on a little toe to wearing fire ant socks. You know, making a style of it. At university I learned, ate from the canned stew of fiery disturbance and been on fire ever since, with the minions afraid to touch me and burn their paper skin, their money-thin houses, their fraud documents, their maps to the treasure. Me? Mistakes? Oh, yeah. And errors of commission and omission. But pale, they pale alongside these global oppressions.
It's interesting you use oppressions instead of oppressors.
Yeah. Because I suppose, for one thing, if you use the term oppressor in a context like that, you're doing exactly what I was hearing is the sort of inevitable direction to go in when you start to have these discussions, which is to get into these kind of conflictual situations.
That's the name.
So you set up a target, you set up an enemy, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's not the enemy. The enemy is the context in which you've been placed.
So the systemic approach.
The systemic dismantling that needs to take place in order for you to get beyond where you are.
Yeah. Look at the principles and policies, not the people and personalities.
Yes, that is well put. I don't know. I'm going to do a little bit of explicit explanation, if you will, just so it may assist listeners to find some keys for themselves. The reference to the 10 floors up and counting and the selling the air in parcels, those are contentious decisions, policy decisions of recent time. The allowance of the 10-floor developments, they talk about owning parcels of air and being able to transfer them.
I apologize, I'm reminded of the break.
Yes.
And she was telling me something, but I didn't quite.
Are we breaking now?
We're breaking for the news.
Okay.
Those explanations will come over.
Okay.
All right. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. The Public Works Department launches a recruitment drive for Caymanians interested in the construction trades industry to enroll in its apprenticeship training program. Open to Caymanians aged 16 to 29 years old, it runs until July 15th. Programs available through the apprenticeship training are carpentry, masonry, plumbing, electrical installation, air condition and refrigeration, welding, as well as building and construction management. Application submissions and queries can be made to the Apprenticeship Training Center Public Works Department, located at 370 North Sound Road, or via email to pwd.apprentice@gov.ky. In international news, the suspected driver of a truck found abandoned in Texas with dozens of bodies inside has been charged with migrant smuggling resulting in death. He was found posing as a migrant in a bush near the truck in San Antonio and arrested by police. Some 53 people died in the tragedy, many of heat stroke and dehydration after being shut inside the truck in blistering heat without any water. It is the deadliest human trafficking incident in U.S. history. An ex-Canadian government IT worker has admitted to being a high-level hacker with a Russian cybercrime group and has agreed to plead guilty in a Florida court. The 34-year-old was affiliated to the NetWalker ransomware crew, which has attacked companies, municipalities, hospitals, schools, and universities. When he was arrested, police discovered he was in possession of $27 million in Bitcoin. The case represents a rare example of a successful arrest and prosecution of a hacker working for a Russia-based cybercrime group. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
We wanna go and dally, backyard.
So you hear the joke about the goat that walk into the yard?
No, tell me now.
I hear it became brunch at Backyard.
The Sunday Fun Day Caribbean Brunch at Backyard. Non-stop food, only $45 for adults and $20 for children under 12. With them store prices, only an ox would miss this because oxtail on the menu too, along with eggs, bacon, callaloo, jerk chicken, and more. Oh, and a curry goat.
Backyard, non-stop food, Sunday Fun Day Caribbean Brunch. Book your table now, 746-4603.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
The best foundation you can wear is glowing, healthy skin. The offices of dermatologist Dr. Wayne Porter specialize in enhancing your skin's well-being. Whether you're seeking advanced skincare, including any skin cancers, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email drportercayman@gmail.com or call 946-9020. That is 946-9020.
For the month of July, the Needs Assessment Unit will hold their district visits as follows. Friday, July 1st, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the West Bay Public Library. Friday, 8th July at the East End Civic Center. From 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., NAU will be serving clients from East End, and from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., they will serve clients from North Side. Friday, 15th July, the Needs Assessment Unit will be in Bordentown from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Bordentown Public Library. And on Friday, 22nd July, NAU will hold a district visit in West Bay from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the West Bay Public Library.
The Honorable Speaker of the House, Mr. Makiva Bush, MP for West Bay West, along with the other three West Bay MPs, West Bay Central, Ms. Catherine Ebanks-Wilkes, West Bay South, Mr. Andre Ebanks, and West Bay North, Mr. Bernie Bush, would like to invite the community to a joint public meeting at the Ed Bush Playing Field on Thursday, June 30th at 7 p.m. That is Thursday, June 30th, 7 p.m. at the Ed Bush Playing Field.
Approximately 600 children aged 3 and over are enrolled in local early childhood centers this academic year. 218 families sought educational funding through the Early Childhood Assistance Program. 77% qualified for funding. See if your child qualifies and secure financing before September by downloading an application form from the Ministry of Education website at www.gov.ky/education and emailing the completed form to ecap@gov.ky by June 30. For more important ECAP application dates, follow Cayman Islands Education on Facebook and Instagram.
Subway is giving you flavor around the clock with the new Chicken Squad sandwich options. Try the classic chicken and bacon ranch, the sweet and savory barbecue chicken, or the chicken cordon bleu. 3 new appetizing and delicious sub options that you can also make into a wrap. The Chicken Squad is available at Subway for only a limited time. Subway, giving you something to cluck about.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thanks for joining us. Thanks to Delinda Dilber for sharing with us. Who knew on a Thursday afternoon poetry could be so fascinating? Eh? I think the only thing is missing, but I'll leave that for now.
Oh my God, I'm getting tangled up.
Yeah,
okay.
You couldn't get more tangled up if you want to cast net. Gee.
Got it.
Hey, my friend Nobi, he said, if you want to see what's going on, you got to go to the fisherman, watch them casting nets. But I guess if we were broadcast now, it would be even better, huh?
Well, that's one of my places.
Yeah, it is indeed.
Places for peace.
Well, until it's been destroyed, but anyway.
Yes. I'm wanting to haste to insert a bit more music into things.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Things have gotten into a kind of political context that I'm not averse to, but it's not what I'm about. And there's a music to the enterprise that is more emphasized in the next couple of pieces that I would like to read. And that's the reason why I want to get them in before our time is up. The first one, I just call it an orchestral. And I'm playing with the term orchestra. And I'm deliberately saying an orchestral as the title and leaving a gap at the end. Because strictly speaking, that's not a phrase that stands on its own. It should be an orchestral something. But I want to leave the blank space to allow for room for what's supposed to happen in the context. And in this particular case, I have two of those nation language kind of references. And I should have made reference to the Diddley shade, I think is the term that is used for this particular plant that we call touch-me-not. I should have made reference to that earlier in the previous piece, but there it is. In this case, there is the term giddy head and the term great frigate bird. We call these birds man o' wars, and they're otherwise known as magnificent frigate bird. But because I'm using the term as great frigate bird spirit, I think the great spirit element fits better than magnificent. So those are my prefaces for this one. An orchestral. A distant orchestral of woodwinds. So much hand clapping and back slapping amongst the trees' leaves, between the leaves of trees. It makes the sense sound of music, a celebration of rhythm, a blues of melody. White wave, black iron shore, punch drunk they're meeting, punch drunk the giddy head, fling, flap, froth of their meeting. Incessant, incandescent heartbeat, island, feel it? Knuckle, kneel, voices are jumping up into the air and almost instantly are no more. Thin air almost imagined, that wail, that rill, that croon, that describes the elbow of the wing of great frigate bird's spirit when it lifts in either one of us. White wave, black iron shore.
It resonates. It's powerful.
Well, hopefully it's powerful, like how music is powerful. There's quite a bit that is not following grammatical rules and all that sort of thing, and is, I suppose, in this case, trying to evoke a specific kind of experience that we are all more or less familiar with. Both the simple things of the wind in the trees and the waves on the iron shore, and in the middle of that, the experience of the embodiment of what Derek Walcott once called phantasmal peace. The sort of peacefulness that you can feel just standing in the breeze and or watching the waves hit the iron shore. And in the case of the blowhole type experience, like voices jumping up into the air and almost instantly are no more. Just the way that the froth comes up and it's gone. And trying essentially to create parallels between those physical experiences and the spiritual experience that comes with that kind of exposure. So, music.
What is it, Shakespeare? Music be the food of love, huh?
Indeed. Yeah. And I've been going to haste because we are into 2:15 now, and time speeds on.
Yeah.
I want to introduce something quite different in the next piece, which sorry, let me have a sip of water. Getting a bit throaty.
All right. As we talk to Mr. Leonard Dilbert, I think what I'm hoping that many people will do as we listen to you is find some way to record our own thoughts, whether we prefer it pen and paper, whether it's electronically, whether it's even some sort of digital device we record our voices. And through you, I've been prone to do that. I had a particular, line the other night, and I said, I'll remember it. And let me just finish this. And I remember the gist of it, but I don't remember. It was almost going to be an alliteration in a sense, right? And we just need to write it down. So,
well, it's a fleeting experience, or it can be a fleeting experience. It can be very difficult to grasp when the spirit moves, so to speak, and you're presented with words, you're presented with images, you're inspired, as to go back to, I've said it before, inspiration being breathed into. And so you have inspiration breathed into you to be able to grasp at something at least that may be inexpressible, but you come close enough that something in what you say echoes within somebody else and perhaps attaches itself to something that they had going on themselves, even if they go in a different direction with it.
Yeah, man.
In this next case, what I'm wanting to speak to is, I suppose, a new kind of iteration of our way of looking at our place in the world. And I would like to end with that because of trying to emphasize that what we're doing, or what I'm doing, is meant to be looking at us in this context as human beings, not looking at us primarily as Caymanians or expatriate or this nationality or that nationality, but looking at us as human beings in this particular community, in this particular setting, and asking ourselves the question, or urging us to ask the question of ourselves: what do we know about where things are going in the earth that we occupy, and what are we going to do with that ourselves? How are we going to contribute to that? How are we going to be dragged behind, or where are we going to be with that? And there are many answers to that. People are beside themselves at the moment with the crisis in the life of the globe that we inhabit. The only one that we know, no matter, we search all over the universe, and there's nothing like it. Whether we'll ever find anything like it is another question. But for the time being, we have a lot of work to do here on planet Earth, right? So, the title of this one is a question: New Earth music, or New Earth music, whichever way you want to read it. I think it allows for both. Come in like the sea thought it could just pound and pound on iron shore, and we watching, we who could see, would say nothing, have nothing to say. Come in like the sea thought it was a hard husband, or a property developer's heavy equipment operator. From the Bacchus iron shore to the Black Bluff, the rock face has been murmuring around the tide lines. The worst stories, some of them say, are the screaming hydraulic hammers and drills. Some others add the gnashing bitterness of the blades, scooping up the broken off, mashed up, horn and thorn rubble of iron shore karst. Like a funeral for the unborn, those who will never see the world with any remaining memory of us in it will not gain any sense of discovered treasure in the better ways of being that we enjoyed before. Imagine being the iron shore and trying to sleep. Imagine living with a partner like that, always digging out your soft bits, grinding them up, dropping and losing them, and seeming to not even notice where they went. And then imagine being iron shore, struggling yet to use sea sounds for making a new, mature earth music. And before you're halfway there, the chrome and crunch, the blunderbuss of iron blades and trades, the choking.
Poignant.
One thing I want to say about that, by way of adding a bit of specificity to the sort of new earth music thing, I came across a design that has been achieved on the in a coastal context, where a sound engineer devised a construction that allowed for the wash of the sea. And I think it must be based on the sea pushing air in front of it. But his design was a set of pipes that were angled and stoppered and so on in a particular way that allowed the air being pushed from the sea, when it exited those pipes, to make music, actual recognizable musical notes. So depending on the way of action, whether it was more fierce or less, you would get different kinds of music. And that was very much in my mind when I wrote this. That was sort of my inspiration in a way. The whole idea that there can be a literal music made out of the earth, if you will, that the earth itself can make its own music. And unfortunately, our education up to now about what the earth is and what it contains and where we are in it is woefully inadequate.
As I listen, I mean, we even recognize that there are times when just walking along the shore, and as the sea hits against it, there are sounds that resonate, that almost sound melodic.
Yes. There is a natural music. Yes.
But it just shows how we, as supposedly apex predator, whatever it is that we say.
Well, remember both terms: apex, predator.
I said it consciously.
Mm-hmm.
We're so unwilling to yield and so insensitive in our.
Yes. Yes, I think we're still to a large extent stuck in the mode that I remember hearing some of our then leading personas in the community say, without fear of contradiction, that man was given dominion over the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought a lot of damage has come out of that particular perspective, out of the perspective that our role in things, we are just below the angels and we can do what we want.
Yeah. But see, that's where I think we misunderstand and misapply that whole context. Because think of it from the perspective, someone leaves something in your charge, you take better care of that thing.
Yes.
Or you're supposed to, right?
Yes.
So that dominion means that, and I think we've just been abusive as opposed to that. Again, we veer into the socio-political.
We've been predatory.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, well, I don't have a problem with the socio-political, and I don't mind engaging at all. I just don't want to confuse things in terms of my own personal objectives and enterprise.
I mean, your reference from the Barker side shows to the Black Bluff, and I think that needs to resonate with us so that we look at this as one country. They're separate and distinct little parts, but everything impacts and affects us all. And the weight that we ascribe to some things may only be peculiar at that point, but it resonates with the rest of us.
Well, yeah, to add to that, it's not only the case that if you do this here, it affects this there, but the depth of those actions and what can so easily be missed. In terms of the Ironshore, I think people generally find Ironshore to be a nuisance. It's not the beach. Therefore, its value is not as great. It's difficult to traverse. It's not a friendly terrain, and therefore you can say, well, why should I have this in front of me at all? Why should I have to deal with this?
Let's get rid of it, huh?
Let's get rid of it. People who build on the Ironshore tend to take that approach. I'm just going to cut down this piece. I'm going to create this by doing that. And without any sort of respect at all for what that is, where it fits in the general ecosystem, not only to do with Ironshore, swamp, etc., but what habitat does that encompass? And even the very lichen that creates the blackening of the Ironshore, our understanding of that is virtually nil. You ask the average school child now what it is that makes the Ironshore black, what would they tell you? They don't know. And the reason why they don't know is because we don't know.
And it hasn't been,
and to all intents and purposes, don't care.
No, that's exactly. I'm glad you put it that way, because we as the adult, the parent, the teacher, whichever, never inquired, and even we ourselves, we've been shot down.
Yeah.
And embarrassed because we don't know, so we won't ask.
Well, I'll add a little bit to that before we run out of time, just to say that, repeat something that I've said privately a couple of times, that personally I apologize to the younger generation. Apologize for myself and for all of us for the mess that we have created and are handing on to them, because we have a lot of explaining to do. We have a lot of mess to clean up if we are going to do anything about it at all. And it's not too late. If I believe it's too late, I wouldn't be here. Right? But we need to get busy.
Yeah. And that maybe comes back to some of the references that we've talked about. Where are the Daniels? Dare to be a Daniel. Why is it that we are so afraid? It seems like we lack the courage and the conviction to speak public about the things that are so obviously lacking. And everybody is castigated. Everybody is worried that they'll be disinvited or somehow dismissed.
You're taking me back to my opening comments now. What constitute success? I can say it's a win-win. Either it impacts and people get upset who are defending and the indefensible, or nobody notices, in which case, well, you got them under control, so they can't even pay attention to what's going on.
Either way, huh?
Either way.
Yeah, I'm hoping that there'll be a renewed awakening, a resounding voice amongst all of us, and something that you shared in that last piece. Let's not look at this other than as people who inhabit a space, irrespective of where we're from, class, color, creed, ethnicity, economic status. Hurricane, God forbid, threatens a particular space. It can affect us all. Looked at from that perspective, and also looked at from the perspective of daily life. Anything that one does to the surroundings is done to the other, in effect. So if I throw trash and the place is a mess, and there are vermin accumulating as a result of it, etc., that is not just going to affect me. It's going to affect you and everybody else. Right? And in a global sense, the same thing happens. We have custody of one of the most precious resources in the world right around us. That is a coral reef. Right? And our only thought, seemingly, of protecting the coral reef, apart from the outliers who are the environmentalists, so to speak, is that it has a value. It can be monetized as a dive site or as dive sites. There's a value to the thing in itself. The sort of ancient nature of coral, its slow growth, its place in the global scenario. I don't believe people really understand how huge a thing it is, and the degree of threat that it is currently experiencing. We couldn't have, these islands wouldn't exist if it weren't for coral. And yet we discard it almost in the same way we do with potable water. It's invaluable, but yet we don't give it any value.
A lot of people don't understand that there's a global crisis in supply of potable water. And it's not going to get better.
And yet we waste it here. We discourage cisterns and wells. The same water I drink from my faucet is the water I use to flush or to shower or to wash my clothes. And this is where, from what you've shared through your writings, should cause us to think and question each other. And like you said this evening with the public meeting, to go and be an active part of and engage the elected, to be reminded that, you've sort of given them authority to act on your behalf. We can do that respectfully and responsibly and still be very much engaging.
My fear now is that engagement can't be what it ought to be because we're not equipped. And those who we would engage with, is not in their interest to equip us, unfortunately.
Well, there, my friend, is where we need to have that continued dialogue publicly. 2 weeks hence,
yes, sir.
We look forward to your company once again.
Indeed.
And thank you very much. And hopefully people would have, at the very least, stop and take stock and maybe reflect and recognize that we are in this together.
Thank you very much for having me. And let me just say to everybody, don't eat the touch me not.
And don't be so quick to dismiss the Bacchus Iron Show or the Bragg Bluff.
Exactly.
All right. And may I, if she would allow me to, make a special appeal to Miss Susan. She's a poet. She writes, she records, she publishes on social media. And she's a voice. And maybe, this would encourage her. Because I say this carefully. There's so many of us who have talent. But we are a bit shy, for want of a better word. And maybe that encouragement from our closest allies could become a little bit more consistent and help us to be nurtured. But like that grandparent who may have had this as an interest way back when. This is something that we can put together and put pen to people, literally, and hopefully recognize the importance of sharing that knowledge.
You got to start somewhere.
Got to start somewhere.
Yes.
All right, well, tomorrow we're hoping to have an excellent discussion for you, including speaking to Luigi Moxham and some others. There is a wonderful event at Pedro this evening. If you get to go out and be a part of it, I think it speaks to what we need to consider. So, hoping that he'll be able to join us tomorrow. And we got another thing that we're hoping to transpire as part of our Mental Health Matters show, but let's see what happens. That'll be the first discussion. Of course, join Mr. Art for the record in the morning and come back for Talk Today right after midday news and midday meditation. I don't know that sometimes the face that we put it on may be necessarily what resonates in our heart, but let our hands, be so instructive that the positive and the good that comes empowers, nurtures, and improves the lives of the lot, and not be at the expense, of the many. Until tomorrow, my friends, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Six years.
3 beloved isles.
1 beloved station, Radio Cayman.
The voice.
The heart.
The soul